What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a review of the brand new Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet palette. The brand sent this to me a few days ago, and so I've been using it. I want to share my thoughts, basically a little review of the whole palette, but I also wanted to include a comparison of a palette that immediately came to mind even before I got this. The second I saw this was launching, the first palette that popped into my head was the Rimmel Magnifies Electric Violet edition. This guy right here. I talked about it recently in a top cool shadows palette video if you want to go check that out. But today I want to compare it specifically to Urban Decay's new Ultraviolet palette. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we even get started, I want your thoughts. Like I've done in the past where I compare palettes like this, I am wearing one palette on one eye and one on the other to see how close I could get my looks using similar shades from each palette to really prove out if they are dupes or just kind of close. So pause the video or keep watching, comment down below which palette you think is on which eye, and let me know how close you think they are. Just kind of looking at them from afar like this. Do you think the purple shades could be dupes? Do you think they're too far off? Like, do I look like I'm wearing two different eye looks right now? Let me know down in the comments. Okay, and now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the Naked Ultraviolet palette. So continuing in Naked palette tradition, you get 12 shades in this palette, same format as previous Naked palettes, and a dual-ended brush in here, which I never mind getting more of, especially because Urban Decay really does their brushes nicely. Like, they're well made. They really get the job of blending done. The one that comes with the Naked UV is a fluffy crease brush, but I also use this to pack on pigment across my eyes pretty regularly, as well as a small domed brush, which is really great for more detailed work. I love for using in on my under eye area, like my lower lash line. It's pretty precise for your inner corner, as well as packing up pigment in my outer corner, like really packing it in with this smaller side and then going in with the fluffier side to blend it out. So overall, I really like the brushes that come with these palettes. Now on to the shadows. So this is really the first in the series of Naked palettes that I'm kind of scratching my head like, guys, is this really Naked? At this point, are we really staying true to how the Naked series started out with Urban Decay? Because when you look at it, you really only have four skin tone-ish sort of shades, like Naked sort of shades. The rest are very colorful, either in the base shade or the iridescent shift that it has to it. So this isn't really a make or break for me. It's just the first time it's kind of dawned on me that like we've gotten kind of far away from the original Naked concept. That said, I think this is a really pretty color palette going on here. It's a surprising combination of warm, peachy light nudes with the purples going on in here. And then you get that sudden pop of teal in this shade Lucid, which looks very teal in the pan, but really has kind of a translucent base and then shifts very strongly teal. Similar with this shade VR, it has sort of a warm, almost like a bricky, soft red base with a blue teal shift to it. Really pretty, really complex. And a lot of these shades are complex. Like Dazed, which is a peach with a gold shift, Warning, which is a soft lilac base with a blue-purple shift to it, Euphoric, which is a deeper blue-purple base with a light blue shift to it, and then lots of, well, a few other textures in here with Cyberpunk and Purple Dust, more of those like kind of glittery or micro glitter. I forget what Urban Decay calls those textures, but some of those in here as well. So overall, I like the color palette that's going on. The thing that surprised me with this palette was how much pigment some of the purple shades lacked, especially as you get down here in the deeper shades. I was really expecting shades like Euphoric and Cyberpunk, these, you know, bold purple shades, to pack some pigment, like pack a real punch based on what you see in the pan, and I think you certainly could with like lots of layering, maybe foiling them or using them over a white base, but that's honestly a little bit more working with than I'm used to with the other Naked palettes. So right off the bat, I would just say I was surprised at how subtle a lot of the more colorful shades in here are, both when swatched and worn. For example, I'm wearing both Cyberpunk and Euphoric on one of my eyes today, and I feel like overall the look has still come off relatively soft despite how, you know, bold and pigmented they like really, really purple they look in the pan. Not necessarily a bad thing as long as you know what to expect going into this palette, but especially when I think of Urban Decay, they were like one of the first brands to pioneer the bold, colorful eyeshadow, and so I was just surprised to see a few of those that came across as more sheer or really took a lot of layering up and working with to get the kind of pigment that you see in the pan here. In terms of it being like a must-have and need-to-have sort of palette, I think it totally depends on what you have in your collection. If you have a bunch of purples, even some that are complex like this, you could probably kind of DIY this yourself. Pair those with the light peaches and nudes that we probably definitely all have in our collection and kind of make your own assortment of these sorts of shades. But this is a combination of shades I haven't seen before in a palette, so to the extent that you really like them, all paired together like this in a palette to go, it could be one you're interested in picking up. If, however, you are just in it for the purples, I think you should definitely give the Rimmel Magnifies Electric Violet Edition a look, because in this palette, no, you don't get the peaches, but you do get a lot of similar purple shades. And don't be fooled by this blue. This kind of threw me when I first saw it as thinking that it was going to be identical to the Naked Ultraviolet, but it's much more pigmented. This is like a very, very pigmented teal blue, not meant to be sheared out or worn as kind of a shifty transformer shade, quite like the one in the Naked Ultraviolet is. But there are some shiftier shades in here. Like over here, you have a light violet with a soft blue shift to it. Here in the middle, this looks kind of like a soft nothing gray sort of shade, but it's really a soft purple white base with a blue shift to it. I'm actually wearing it as a highlight today. And in fact, let's just go ahead and give it away now. I am wearing the Rimmel on the right side of my face and the Naked on the left. And I feel like for the most part, except when you see like the inner corner highlight up front, it's basically the same look. So to the extent that you're just looking at the purples in this Urban Decay palette, you should probably reach back in the Ultraviolet palette if you have it, or go check it out. I haven't seen it in drugstores in a while. You might have to pick it up on Amazon, but it's definitely worth a look because it's got some pretty purples, some complex purples in there, and a lot of them can do similar things as the Urban Decay palette. So let's do a rundown of what I'm wearing on each of my eyes. On the Rimmel side, I started off with the super soft matte mauve shade over here. That went in my crease, and it is almost identical to the soft matte mauve shade in the Urban Decay UV palette, which is called Hacked. That went in the crease on the Urban Decay side of my face. Then I put a soft matte lavender on both sides. On the Rimmel side, that was this somewhat bold looking matte lavender, and on the Urban Decay side, that was the shade called Optimized. And even though the Rimmel one looked a little bit more pigmented, it was pretty easy to sheer and blend out, so it gave me a similar pastel look as that shade Optimized from Urban Decay. Next, I went in with the inner corner highlight, and this is where I feel like the two looks started to look a little bit different because there's nothing like the shade Lucid in Urban Decay in this Rimmel palette. So I went in with the soft lavender with a blue iridescent shift to it, thinking that maybe that blue shift would kind of mimic what Lucid in Urban Decay does. That is on the inner corner in my Rimmel side, and then of course Lucid is on the inner corner on my Urban Decay side. There's a pretty big difference there, but as far as a transformer shade goes, I still think you could do that with the Rimmel shade and get a blue iridescent shift to any shadow you put that over top of. So not quite like Lucid, but gives a similar effect. Now this last step where I go in and deepen my outer corner and really try and make it a bold pop of purple, this is where I really started to notice the lack of pigmentation in the Ultraviolet Urban Decay palette. So to do the Rimmel side, I went in with this one shade right here. It's the shade that is 2 over from the bold blue in this palette, and I patted that in my outer corner and blended it out. Was pretty happy with it. On the Urban Decay side though, I didn't have an exact shade match, so I did a mixture of the shades Cyberpunk and Euphoric. Euphoric has that iridescent shift to it, so I knew it wouldn't be fully pigmented, especially at certain angles, but even mixing it with that deep kind of grapey of Cyberpunk, and it still took quite a bit to layer up. That's when I went in with the smaller end of the brush that comes with the palette, really patted it in there, and then started blending it out from there. It took a lot more packing than I thought it would or should for shadows that look this bold in the palette. And of course, if you really wanted to add like a lot of depth to the Urban Decay, you could go in with the shade Digital, which is the deepest shade in here. But if you just want like a really, really bold purple, you probably won't get it from Cyberpunk or any of these, you know, ultra purple shades right here unless you layer it up over a colorful base. And I find you can get very similar performance out of the purples from the Rimmel palette. So that's that. Those are my thoughts on the Urban Decay Ultraviolet palette. I don't think it's bad. I just think you need to know what you're getting into going into it, like the kind of pigmentation to expect. Again, it's a really pretty collection of shades. I like how they've combined the purples and the peaches. In that way, it's unlike anything I have, but if you're just in it for the purples, I hope this comparison to the Rimmel palette helped you out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys.